everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to give it just a few extra minutes. Looks like about half of our registrants are in the call right now, but just to ensure that everybody has a little bit of extra time to join us, we'll wait a second to get started. And while we do wait for a few other people to connect here, we'll just go ahead on our end and do some introductions. And so for myself, my name is Don Dempsey. I'm a partnership director here at First Ignite, covering North America, Australia, and New Zealand. And I'm joined by my colleague, Omar Martinez, Omar, take it away.
Hi, everyone. My name is Omar Martinez. I'm the partnership director for the EMEA region. Covering anywhere from Europe to Africa and touching a little bit on the Middle East. And great to be here with all you guys.
Perfect. And Omar, we'll give it just 2 more minutes and then we can go ahead. You can get started, with our first little portion here.
Yeah, sounds good.
Because people are still filing in, which is great. And then final note, as we are waiting for everyone to load in here, we do encourage you guys to ask questions, comments, feedback in the questions portion of the Livestorm app here. And throughout, Omar's going to make sure that we stop and just review those questions, get to as many as we can. But yeah, just the more the merrier. So we're looking forward to it. Perfect. And Omar, it looks like we have over half of our registered members in the call right now. So if you want to go ahead and get started with your portion, then that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we can focus on an article that we found pretty interesting and pretty, I guess, directed towards TTOs and their pain points that are kind of arising throughout the year and the upcoming years, especially about how nimble and flexible they have to become on a yearly basis. So yeah, going to be touching down a little bit on the article. I've narrowed down on some key aspects of this article that could be interesting to discuss. And as Dom well mentioned, any questions that you might have, I'll be stopping his presentation later on to be able to get those questions answered, right? So please feel free to message anytime needed. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Don, if you can confirm with me once you can see it, so we can make sure our audience can see it as well.
Perfect. It just loaded in for me.
Perfect. All right. So yeah, so this is just an article that we found, and we probably just want to focus on a few different areas about this article that could be very relevant for all the individuals that have joined us here today. So basically, this article it talks about is titled "An Industry Shift Pushed Universities to Do More Entrepreneurship, Tech Transfers, Learning to Adapt." So going back to my previous point about how on a yearly basis we're seeing, or even on a monthly basis, how it's seeing technology transfers have to be much more nimble and do a lot more with a lot less. So maybe just focusing on a paragraph here that I will read out because I know it's quite small and maybe you're not able to read from over there, but basically research and development costs increased for businesses. In turn, they were more wary of the effort to incubate university ideas, but business were willing to buy in again if universities took their own risks to develop early research for commercial use. So yeah, just focusing on this specific part for basically the industry standards, as I mentioned before, have tightened up, making it a more competitive market and forcing us to think outside the box, right? Where First Ignite really comes in here is First Ignite is able to ensure our technologies are ready for market by running specific assessments and scoring our portfolio into a go or no-go type of report, right? So these are kind of the solutions that First Ignite is going to be adopting. I want to also focus on a different paragraph here. But across Nebraska and the Midwest, the industry shift is also pushing tech transfer to be more nimble, more in tune with industry needs, and more hands-on to help innovation leave the university orbit. Like any change, it comes with growing pains, right? So industry is asking more of university TTOs than ever before, causing a shift in how we approach these relationships and causing more work and often with much less support, right? Where first thing that really drives solutions here is that we streamline these capabilities, but more importantly, we dive into detailed information on why these industry partners are identifying would be interested in our technologies, right? Identifying their specific needs in R&D as well as tech alignment. And the last paragraph that I want to just focus a little bit more on is kind of here the bigger lift, right? Supporting startups means tech transfers has to do more with less. Most offices lose money on operations, including in Nebraska. Some have also lost staff, which went from roughly 18 to 11 over the past decade, while managing more innovation and entrepreneurship. But that's a bet tech transfer needs to make. Tight budgets and unstable federal research funding leave few other options to get money reinvested for researchers and students, right? So TTOs are asked, to do much more with much less, while also navigating new landscapes on how industry operates. Everyone is going through budget cuts at the current moment, and unstable federal funding is a strong aspect that we're going through. So we need to shift outside of the box, thinking, more outside the box and be able to find these nimble aspects that could get us ahead of the curve. So where first thing I would come in here would be streamlining these capabilities and allowing collaboration across campus and a simpler way to navigate these ever-changing landscapes. So not sure if anyone has any questions or even any sort of input. Yeah, absolutely, Mark. We'll definitely share that article with you after the call. I think Don, if you can share that as well on the email, I think Don will be sending out an email after this call, so you will be receiving this article as well. But yeah, would love to hear from anyone in the audience, kind of your perception on this. Are you currently going through the same struggles? And any other, or maybe any other questions you might have before I pass it on to Don.
Perfect. Well, what we could do, Omar, is, once again, encourage everyone to, throughout the presentation, ask questions, send comments, etc. And then we'll make sure we keep stopping to just address everything.
Perfect.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it, Omar. Definitely gives us a good understanding of what we're going through today. And it looks like Mark, same struggles. Yes, of course. And that's where, First Ignite really does step in, because I understand that, or we understand that the university market's going through a pretty radical change and has over the last year with the federal funding landscape, and just the overarching theme is having to do more with less. And so where First Ignite really steps in is able to streamline those capabilities, whether it's identifying those industry partners based off of their specific needs, or earlier stage and looking at our portfolio and just understanding what is ready for market, what should we be advertising to industry, and in the same vein, what might need put on the back burner for any sort of reason that might cause some friction there. And so to share my screen, I'm going to go ahead and pull up. I have an example for us today here using tech transfer, or a technology from the portfolio at Texas A&M. And Omar, just to confirm, you could see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. Alrighty, so how the software works is we're able to take any technology, any initiative that you guys are currently working on, and then quickly identify those companies and contacts that would be specifically interested in this technology themselves. And so a few different options we have for uploading this information is either simply copying and pasting. So you can see we have the abstract, the different benefits, market application, any associated publications with this technology, as well as the ability to simply download this one pager. Maybe it's a publication, invention disclosure, patent application. As long as that technology, or as long as your input text is using that same language, then we'll be able to get our desired results. And so between copying and pasting here, and then I downloaded this one pager for that same invention, we'll go ahead and move everything over to the First Ignite software. And now a great starting point for any initiative that we'll currently be working on is always on the left-hand side of our screen in this autopilot tool, simply because it encompasses just about every tool that lives underneath it here. And so as you can see, we have a couple different options here. We could just do the text, which we'll paste, or if we want to do both, we can add any supporting documentation. Once again, publications, pictures, PowerPoints, anything that we think will provide more detail and ultimately get us the most granular results. And so for today's demo, I'll go ahead and drag and drop the one pager in here as well. And then we'll hit our launch button. And what the software will now begin to do is ping millions and millions of data nodes. Once again, going back to identifying those industry needs, we'll be taking a look at their current patent portfolios, research development projects, maybe products or projects in their pipeline. Ultimately, all of the reasons why the resulting companies and contacts would be specifically interested in partnering with this technology themselves. And so ultimately, therein lies one of the many true value propositions that the software has to offer, which, going back to our theme of doing more with less, is very quickly allowing us to identify these different companies and contacts that would be interested in our technology, almost entirely eliminating that tedious business development, sales development activity, and really just promoting more of that proactive outbound communication that's ultimately going to lead to new opportunities brought into the university and ultimately more revenue. And now, since we are on Zoom and actually on Livestorm, this takes just an extra moment to load, but I ran this project ahead of time and we could take a look at the results here together. And so taking a look at our finished project here, you can see we have a handful of information, which once again is why I encourage it as that starting point, because you can see we have our companies, company search, people, markets, etc. If we do want to get more granular, we're always welcome to come down here into our one-off tools. But I encourage this to have a comprehensive overview and give us a really good understanding of what we need to be prioritizing. And so first, to take a look at our companies, we're always going to start with 30 companies, always having the ability to add more. We'll get their basic information like their name, employee count, industry and location, plus a nice little vignette really speaking as to why they'd be such a positive fit for collaboration. And now going back and really understanding those industry needs and making those specific alignments, you can see as I scroll through, we're going to have text boxes under each company, really further breaking down that criteria, going far beyond that surface level keyword matching, but actually getting into the detail of why we have something that they need. And so, for example, taking a look at Pilot Chemical, we'll do a deep dive into their technology alignment, maybe technologies they have today in their portfolio, or maybe that are in development where we can kind of step in and help. And as you can see, we're going to source our information all throughout. Additionally, we'll take a look at their recent research and development expenditures, really understanding how much money they're spending, where they're spending their money, maybe where they plan to spend their money over the next several years, and being able to understand what in our portfolio would really align well with Pilot Chemical based off of these different needs. And then finally, the last two text boxes are always going to be specific to our input text, or in this case, our technology. And so experience with advanced cooling and lubrication fluids, we'll go ahead and get detail on what exactly they need this for, what about their business practice, what about their different goals, really align with our technology here. And then finally, environmental sustainability commitment and certifications. And so once again, these last two, they're always going to be specific to our input text, making sure that we're getting into the detail of why these match. But beyond this, if we want to learn any more about these companies and even get a little bit more into the weeds with it, what we could do is click into any company. So we'll actually just keep it on theme here with Pilot Chemical. And the software is going to provide a few additional pieces of content. First, we'll get a nice little snapshot of who this company is, their annual revenue, as well as a link to their website. But more importantly, we'll have news articles and events, taking our text and tying it back to this company, understanding what about what's going on at this company would make us a positive fit, whether it's facility expansion, launching new products, developing new projects, maybe taking on funding, new partnerships, etc. All of those business analytics that really just help us make these decisions and also allow us to be very specific with our outreach and pointing this out to them as to why we're reaching out. Additionally, within each company profile, we get this nice competitive analysis section, understanding other companies that are operating in this same space for additional positive contacts to reach out to. And now, important to note here, we're not just looking at companies that are in the same industry or, those face value stats of the same number of employees, revenue, etc. We're once again going to look at the detail of each company from that tech alignment perspective, research development perspective, etc., to make sure that we're really getting the companies that we want to be interacting with. Next, within our company portfolio here, we get the verified contact information for all of the individuals at these companies. And now with
Hi, Don.
200, oh yeah.
Sorry, Don. We have a question from Leah, mentioning, would it point us to the right person to reach out to depending on the purposes of the partnership?
Yes, most definitely. Most definitely. And so, Leah, that's a great question. And actually, you got a little bit ahead of me, which is fine. But that's going to be kind of fall into our next portion. And I can touch on it here as well. And so very specifically, once we identify, 212 people, obviously it goes a little bit against the time saving mechanism of the software if we have to sift through and find who we need to be speaking with. So we have our different opportunities for job title filters, where we could just take a look at leadership, or maybe there's a specific title that you guys constantly reach out to, like a university liaison or licensing manager. We can always type these in here. And then additionally, taking a look at our alumni search. So, really strengthening that relationship when we're able to point out the fact that maybe that specific person we need to talk to was an alumni of our university, just furthering that connection and better establishing that relationship. And then, Leah, not only can we take a look at those job titles and kind of really get into the nitty gritty of why they're the people that we want to reach out to, we can also auto prospect, which finds those key decision makers at the company specifically related to our input text. And now I'll give this a minute to load here, but instead of wasting too much time on it, once again, it is the exact tool that we're going to be taking a look at next. So I'll be able to get into a little bit more detail on how we're able to identify those groups. Perfect. And then finally, each company profile comes with this nice overview section. So once again, doing a deep dive internally, really understanding what about what about our technology would pique this company's interest. And then just like our news articles, giving us another opportunity to be very specific with our outreach by taking a look at any applicable products or projects they currently have going on that specifically align with our technology themselves. And so before moving on from the company portion of Autopilot, Omar, do we have any other questions that I can cover?
Not for the moment.
Awesome. In that case, we'll kind of jump back to Leah's question here, because it's great that we were able to identify 30 companies as positive fits for licensing opportunities. However, once again, defeats the purpose of time saving if we have to go through 4,000 people, 3,000 people, even 640. And so to take a look, once we identify these 30 companies and we want to know who we should be interacting with, we'll go to our top people section here, which essentially auto prospects those 30 companies and identifies those key decision-making authority figures in the areas that we're going to need them most. And as I scroll through here, we could see Senior Director of Research Development, VP of Additives, Senior VP of Technology and Product Stewardship, Vice President of Innovation and Technology Development, all of the individuals who are ultimately really going to be able to push these conversations forward for us. And now to take it a step further here, we have that direct link to their LinkedIn, if that's our preferred method of communication. We also have the verified email address for each and every individual on the software. But it's typically pretty monotonous and also just takes up, once again, a lot of time, just that manual effort to do this outreach. And so the option we have is either clicking on someone's profile or simply clicking on their name. So we'll take Doug, for example. And the software provides 2 additional pieces of content for us. So what loaded in on the left-hand side is going to be Doug's background through his LinkedIn, maybe an article written about him on the company website, to really understand why he's the individual that we want to be reaching out to. And then once again, giving us that ability to, show that personal side of things, show them that we really did our due diligence, and maybe we can highlight something that Doug has done in his past, taking a look at his experience, education, etc. And then what loaded in on the right-hand side here is actually going to be editable email marketing content, highlighting the fact that we do have a potential technology licensing opportunity, not only explaining what that opportunity is, but also specifically aligning it to Qualcomm Metalworking themselves. So describing our technology, making that specific alignment, and then also finally asking for a time to meet. And now this is the one template that we have for tech transfer. But if we click in here to compose an email, you can see we have a few different prompts depending on how you guys like all of this information laid out, how you typically like to reach out to individuals. And then ultimately, maybe you want to piece together something from the first one and the third one. You can always set the default prompt for your specific office, really outlining what exactly you want these emails to be structured as. And now,
Don, maybe we can take a few. We have a few questions come in, so maybe we
perfect.
can answer those. Yeah. So from Justin, is there a way to cross-reference or integrate the list of companies with those that the university is already engaging with?
Great question. And so what I would say to that is it depends on, first of all, the CRM that you're utilizing, but all of the information that we're seeing here is able to be pulled off of the software. And so, Justin, what we could do is once we identify these 30 companies, that's great. We can export a list of those companies, upload them into any CRM or internal database that would be able to go ahead and cross-reference, who we're currently reaching out to. Now, on the flip side of that, if we're just sticking within the First Ignite software, then what we'll be able to see is our past email history with any group. So clicking back into Doug here, we'll have past email history here. We can notate any specific individual. And then ultimately we can make a list and save a list of specific companies that we're reaching out to for any specific technology or project that we're operating. Does that help answer your question?
Great. And maybe we can move on to the next question from Jesse. Yeah, Justin said that's great, Justin. Is there any order of the people and or companies? Is there some sort of top-down ranking of whom to contact first?
That's a great question. So when it comes to the companies, we're always going to start with our order being in order of relevance from highest to lowest. So you could see with Quaker Houghton, we have an 84% relevance match. We'll scroll all the way down to the bottom here. And these last guys, M&I Materials Limit, we have a 64% match. So there is always going to be the order of relevance that is kind of ranking these companies. And then very similar from there, once we go to the different people that we want to reach out to, we'd be able to identify, okay, Quaker Houghton, that's the best match that First Ignite was able to pull. So we're going to want to get Glenn in our first round of outreach. And so from there, you'd be able to decipher, who you want to be reaching out to from these different groups. And there is a customization option with the way that these companies are laid out. So if you wanted to go from alphabetical order, you could. Employee count, if you're just looking for smaller companies, we can go ahead and flip the script there. Order by specific industry, location, and then ultimately that relevance. Great question.
So Jesse had a quick follow-up on that one. So maybe he mentioned that the first person was not from Quaker on the People's tab. So the compass.
Yeah, no, of course. So who they're aligning for us here, it doesn't necessarily have an order of relevance similar to how we have it on our companies laid out. This is the people search, or the top people tab is simply laying out all of the individuals in each company that we want to be reaching out to. Now, I will say with that, we're always looking to improve the software. We really have built this off of our partners' feedback over the last several years. And so that's something that I'd be happy to take back to the product development team and essentially say, let's order these in rank of relevance from the companies. It should be mirrored on the people section.
Hopefully that answered your question, Jesse. And then Don, just one more question from the
Yeah,
audience, from Leah. Is there any risk of hallucination?
great question. And so, you know, I'd be lying if I said there was absolutely zero risk of hallucination. You know, as everyone knows, AI is constantly developing, ever changing. However, what I will say is that we mitigate that quite a bit. And that main way we do that is sourcing our information throughout all of our results. So we're constantly giving us the ability to go to these exact articles, publications, etc., that are, keeping our information honest and true, and also allowing our partners the quick ability to say, okay, I'm just going to double check this and go here, or even sharing this with other, relevant researchers, inventors that you're working with today. And on top of that, with our emails, for example, each email you can see here as we click get email, it goes through a 5-step validation process. So we're able to send 5 dummy emails to each of these accounts. And then once we get a 5 out of 5 deliverability and clicked, then we're able to verify that and upload it to the software itself. Now you will see, and I swear, every time I try to find an email or a no email listed, I can't do it on a call, but we'll see if it's relevant here. So if we can't identify or verify someone's email, it'll simply say no email here. So we're not just guessing at this information. We're guaranteeing that every email that you access on the software itself will end up in these individuals' inbox. And once again, I can't find one that says no email, which is great because once again, we are able to verify a lot of different emails and just have a plethora of contact information on here. But I think that feeds into, how we're able to avoid those hallucinations is all of the due diligence that we're doing on the back end, verifying this information before putting it up on the software.
Yeah, absolutely, Don. And that's something that I completely like about our system is that if we are doubtful if some information is valid or not, we prefer not to even mention it, just because we want to make sure that every information that we provide on our system is relevant. And of course, we have all the sources to back it up, and to make sure that from your side that it's also going to be able to do its own due diligence. And then from Leah, she basically just had a little follow-up question about, is there a way to ask that the claims in the email draft be verified?
The claims in the email draft be verified. Yes. So just so I'm understanding correctly, Leah, in the sense that we're describing our technology and what it is and making that alignment and then making a verification from that.
Yes.
And no, perfect. And yes, so the way that we're able to do that kind of goes into how we're able to avoid those hallucinations is we're sourcing all of the information from these different companies to make those specific alignments. And then we're also utilizing that input text that we just uploaded into the software to construct these emails. So the verification almost comes from the front end or the user in this regard, simply by making sure that, what I went or touched on earlier is it doesn't matter the type of information we're putting in the sense of copying and pasting a publication, a one pager. It just matters that it's speaking the same language as our initiative ourselves and, really speaking to what we want to be prioritizing. And so that is the way that we would verify the fact that, we are able to get this information in here correctly, making those claims correctly, and then ultimately aligning it with these companies that we're reaching out to.
Hope that was clear, Leo. And from Chris, Don, what data or statistics can you provide about outreach results overall? How many clicked emails, requests for additional information, any metadata that shows the results of the platform's recommendation is valuable?
Yeah, of course. Of course, that's a great question. And that's actually something, along with the article that I'll be sharing with you guys after the call here, I'll be sure to get a handful of case studies from current partners, really outlining, not only their use case, but then those specific success metrics. One that I could touch on that, we're extremely proud of is a longtime partner of ours, Idaho National Laboratories Technology Transfer Office. They were able to 3x their number of licensing opportunities year over year by utilizing the First Ignite software. And so very specifically with Autopilot, identifying those companies that are positive fits and then utilizing our outreach method, they've had a 10x increase in the number of conversations, which ultimately has led to a 3x increase in the number of licensing opportunities presented to them. And then to expound on that a little bit more as well, because I think it's just important, in terms of our company's history. When we were founded in 2019, we were essentially acting as business consultants for our university partners. We were doing all of the work that we're seeing the software do now by hand. So not to toot our own horn, for lack of a better term, but we've gotten extremely good at the mass email marketing. And so that has really played a role in how we're building out these different templates and utilizing these different prompts to get this information across in a concise manner, but also leading to some really great response rates. Perfect. So are we all caught up on there, Omar?
Yes, we're all caught up. I'll bug you again once we get some more questions coming in.
Perfect. Those are great questions, and honestly went through a lot of what I wanted to discuss. But I would say the last two components of the people and email tool that I do want to explain. If we click into anyone's email to make this streamlined, you could copy and paste this into your existing organization's email. But a lot of our partners like to simply send it directly from the software itself, in which case we would customize an email domain for you and your team. And then any responding communication will go back to the email that you signed up to the software with. So you won't have to look at your First Ignite inbox and your university inbox. Everything will all be in that one place there. And then finally, instead of having to, let's say we want to reach out to Jason, Christoph, and Chris, we don't have to click in and go one by one. If we would like, we could send it to all 51 contacts that we find relevant. Simply click bulk email, and then it will go ahead and take our input text and then align it with each specific company, really personalizing all of those emails and outreach, and then getting that done, far quicker. Perfect. Well, to move along through Autopilot here, we identified the companies that we want to reach out to, the different people that we need to be reaching out to, and what we can say to them. But what if we have a backlog of initiatives and just don't have time to get a nice quick write-up like this? Or we just want some additional marketing material that we're able to send out to the masses? We created our summary section, which once again takes that input text and creates a one-page non-confidential marketing report, highlighting what exactly our technology is, the key advantages it provides, marketplace applicability. Just like our emails, we can click in and fully edit this document, save and export as a PDF, HTML, or text document. And now with the summary section, very similar to the emails, where we have those default settings for the different groups that we work with, you can also create a default setting for your office. So if this isn't how you guys like to have these write-ups created, that's not a problem. As I mentioned earlier, everything that lives under Autopilot is encompassed within it. So if we wanted to, we can come down to our summary section here and create our own template that simply you and your team set as that default and you guys are using. So even if it's not for mass marketing material, but for, just getting these summaries generated for your technology to be able to put in your portfolio and advertise like we're seeing here, then we could go ahead and set it up exactly how we see it here and be able to list that within the First Ignite platform. And then jumping back in, we'll go through one more section here and then take a few questions on Autopilot. So our last section is going to be our market reports tool. Market reports is once again analyzing that input text and then highlighting the 6 most applicable markets for this technology. As you can see, when I scroll through, we have a detailed reasoning for each match, but more importantly, we'll go ahead and break this industry down into some greater detail, providing the challenges and opportunities that individuals typically face when entering each market, segmenting the market down into some greater detail, and then finally, providing additional companies for us to reach out to. So not only in our top companies are we going to have those bigger players or those household names, But just as important, if not more important, is we have these smaller companies or startups that tend to fly under the radar here. And so overall, autopilot, once again, I encourage it as that starting point, especially for those business development purposes, simply because it's going to give us the most amount of information with the fewest amount of clicks. And then from here, if we want to get more granular, we can always go down to these different tools and search as one-offs as well. And so, Omar, before I do move on from autopilot and jump to our technology assessment tool, did any questions file in that I could cover?
I do believe there's a question coming in, so maybe we can give a few seconds here.
Yeah.
Don, maybe it'll be interesting to see on the Add Companies tab where they can be very, very direct on the companies they want to be able to look into, especially under intent.
Yeah,
Maybe we can show that.
most definitely. So this will be a good opportunity to kind of show how these tools live separately as well. So if we click Add Companies within any project, you can see it takes us directly to our company search here. So it's going to go ahead and keep that same input text. So we keep that aligned. I'll go ahead and copy that, and then I'll just show us how we could do it down here. So coming down to company search, if you do want to have all of that input, that's great. But maybe, it's a little bit early on, or you just want to do a blanket search for all of your technologies in a specific portfolio or category. You could search by keywords or industries here, but you can also see we have a few additional filter options. So taking a look at company size, revenue, as Omar just touched on, and I think it's one of our most used filters, is their history of intent. So in this case, we would want to see companies with a history of licensing technologies from the university level to really get down into the detail and understand which companies are going to be most positive to reach out to. And then finally, we could look at organization type as well, but we'll just keep that at companies. And for this particular instance, we'll just do a blanket search on medical device manufacturing. We'll go ahead and find those companies. And now the only difference here, other than autopilot, is, well, beyond not having the market search and etc., we don't get the nice little rocket animation. So it's the 3 little bars, but all of this information loads in the exact same way. So it'll be ranked in order of relevance. It'll have that little write-up as to why there's such a positive fit. And then our 4 additional text boxes that really break that down. And so I'll give this a moment to load in. And then Omar, while this is loading, did that other question come in?
Absolutely. So from Lindsay, any advice on what types of technologies are best served? I'm thinking about, for example, technologies that can serve several different markets, maybe an innovation robotics, for example.
Yeah, that's a great question. And so I wouldn't say that there is a category or a type of technology that you're going to get the best results on. The software system was built to be able to ingest just about anything. So whether it is the most technical aspect that you can think of, or something that is just kind of bare bones or basic, for lack of a better term, you're going to get those same results for both. Now, you made an interesting point there in terms of being able to identify something that is going to be highly relevant in several different industries. So in that aspect, yes, keying in on those technologies, especially for an autopilot project, I think that's beneficial because it gives you a really good understanding of the different industries that it would be beneficial in. And then once again, breaking down those specific reasons as to why for each different company, industry, market, etc. We'll give this just another moment to load here. Once again, on Livestorm, sometimes it'll slow us up a little bit.
Maybe we can focus on another question that just came in from Leah.
Perfect.
Can the software be used to find potential clients for executive education leadership development programs that a university can create and customize for organization? Or is it more focused on research and tech?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say it's not more focused on one or the other. And we're just going to jump out of this so we can kind of tackle this question as well. But you can see we have a few different targeting modes for, just different departments at the university level. So for like a workforce development, I would still probably keep it within research and partnerships. Now I know it just says innovation, R&D, and tech leaders, but we're also diving into more detail based on that input text. So if you were looking for executive leadership to join a specific workforce development program or have some sort of teaching opportunity at the university, then we can go ahead and copy and paste our input text. But at the end, we can manipulate it a little bit just in terms of focusing on those key aspects of the people that we're trying to pull. In addition to that, we can also find those through company search. And then if we have any specific companies that we have in mind that we want to be reaching out to, we could always just drop down to people search, go into those specific companies, or even take a look at industries that align well with our specific project or program at the university, and then filter by job titles. So that way we'll very quickly be able to identify those executive level individuals within specific industries that ultimately align with our project themselves. Perfect. Hopefully that covered that for you, Leo.
Yeah, I did. And yeah, we can continue on with the demonstration.
Awesome. Yeah, because we have about 18 minutes left here. So I want to make sure that we have enough time for tech assessment, which I touched on a little bit earlier. That's the aspect of the technology, or the software rather, that's going to allow us to create that go or no-go report for our portfolio. And something that Omar touched on throughout that article is really just, putting the onus on the TTOs to do this research prior to, as opposed to maybe in the past, it was a little bit more early stage that these industry partners were, tagging along or making these partnerships. And maybe now they're asking for a little bit more due diligence on our end before they're taking that leap. And so jumping up to our tech assessment tool here, it's going to work very similar to autopilot. And I'm just going to jump back real quick. So we have our quick mode, which is just going to be 4 evaluators, all weighted the same. And then we have our advanced mode, which you can see we have a handful of different evaluation processes, as well as a different number of evaluators and categories within each. And so to give us a little bit of an idea on different capabilities that we have for this, go ahead and create a new template. Test. And here, I won't bore us and go through all of these different evaluators, but you can see we're taking a deep dive into technical analysis, readiness analysis. Maybe we want to do a bit of a prior art impact and see that prior art search or differentiation. We do have the ability to really rank these and create these different default templates, however we see fit. But for today's demo, I do have a quick mode available, as well as a commercialization process here. So we have 30 evaluators in 7 different categories. And so to start with our quick mode, you can see we'll just go ahead and click Tech Assessment, Create, and then very similar to Autopilot, either copying and pasting information about the technology in here, adding any supporting documents that we would like to use, and then ultimately clicking Generate Report. Now, to go through, Autopilot is going to run at about 45 seconds to a minute. Tech Assessment, as you can see when I open these up, they're doing a much deeper dive. And so it's going to take anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes to run these. But once again, I did run this ahead of time, and we could take a look at the results here together. And so after analyzing this technology, you can see we have our overall score on the left-hand side, broken down by our 4 different evaluators. For the base assessment, we're always looking at the same 4 evaluators: market potential, patentability, resource requirements, and technical feasibility. And now, at first, these numbers probably look a little ambiguous. We don't really know what they mean, but clicking Show Details, we go ahead and do a detailed overview of how we arrived at these scores. Once again, sourcing our information all throughout. So really cutting down on those potentials for hallucinations, very quickly being able to allow our partner to not only double check and, not even necessarily double check, but just the ability to dive deeper into any specific detail that we're pulling up here. And so I'll click back here. On top of that, once we're clicking in and understanding, how we arrived at these different scores, scrolling down to the bottom here, we have our conclusion. and then a handful of analysis questions to further explain how the AI arrived at these conclusions. So there are specific questions that our system asks of this technology essentially, and then breaks down exactly how we got that answer, where we're pulling our information from, and overall just giving us a really strong ability to be able to rank our portfolio and understand what we should be pushing to market and what might need put on the